Welcome to our first show, and it's from the National Aging in Place Council. We're based here in New Hampshire, and we wanted to share with you a little bit about not only who we are, what we do, but some of the people that are really involved in it. I'd like to first introduce Kirsten. She's with Marketing Ally, and Marketing Ally, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I help small businesses with their strategic marketing initiatives.
And we also have Gail Davis here, and she happens to be one of the founders of the National Aging in Place Council here in New Hampshire. And she's also the owner of Senior Helpers based in Stratham.
Gail, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how NAIPC got started here in New Hampshire?
Great, thank you. Darlene Pearl, who's a mortgage broker in Portsmouth, approached me one day and she said, I keep running into all of these issues with potential clients that they're aging in place and they want to age in place and they don't know how to do it, and who do I use for this resource or that? So she started to look at it, and she found out there's a National Aging in Place Council headquartered in where else but Washington, D.C. And so she wrote to them, found some information, then she reached out to me, and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. It really fits into what we're doing, because not only do we want to educate the community about what it is to need assistance in your home, but this is a whole group that focuses around super resources for people that want to age in place and their families.
I have a question for you. How does, is somebody vetted in this situation? So if somebody wanted to have, say, their roof raked or something, what happens? Tell me how that happens, or what's involved.
Great. So all the members of NAIPC throughout the country are all background checked. So if I was to recommend you to join the organization, then you would have to go be background checked, make sure that you don't have any crimes against seniors, for example, in your history. All of our members, no one just knocks on our door really to say, I want to be a member. Most of us have recommended others to join, just like you were recommended, and Kirsten, you were recommended.
How would you recommend, so you recommend somebody.
Mm-hmm.
How does somebody, if they wanted to just join the organization, what do they do? How do they get involved?
Well, I'd first of all go to the naipc.org website, look at the types of businesses that really have a meaningful place, whether it's financial, whether it's insurance, technology. It could be in-home care, it could be physical therapy, on and on and on. What resources do seniors need?
And how long have you, I know you started almost 2 years ago?
2 years, yeah.
Wow. So from a grassroots, and how many members
now?
From
2 people to, I don't know, maybe 18.
18 now?
But 18, and that's 18 different companies. That's 18 companies that learned about each other and now can go out there and say, geez, you want an activity to do with your family? You can call my friend Al at the Voice Library. So it's really great.
The interesting part is how much it's grown. And there's so many people that have been coming to our meetings that want to find out more information. So would you tell them when we meet and where?
Sure, we meet on the third Thursday of every month for a brown bag luncheon at the Senior Helpers location at 62 Portsmouth Avenue in Stratham.
Okay, if somebody wanted to come, they'd call ahead and say...
Yeah, you can call ahead, you can shoot us an email,
yep.
Drop into the Senior Helpers office and express your interest, and we'll get back to you.
Fantastic, huh?
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Aren't you glad you're a member?
Yes, I am. We're very glad. Let's go more into, give us some now background that you're here, and that's your background is home care, right?
Yes.
A little bit about Senior Helpers and a little bit about what's going on in aging in New Hampshire, because
Sure.
It is significant.
Sure. Well, Senior Helpers, we provide in-home non-medical care, primarily right now in Rockingham and Strafford County. In the fall, we'll be pushing over to Merrimack and moving west a little bit. But when you look at the demographics in the state of New Hampshire, we're the third oldest state in the country. Our median age is 42.
Wow.
Okay. The number of residents in the state of New Hampshire since the early 2000s has grown 75% to a category of 75% of our population is between 60 and 65. Think about that, okay? Those between 55 and 59 years of age have grown 54%. And really scary, by 2030, over a third of our population is going to be over 65.
You know what's
I
intriguing?
call that, excuse me, Al, you
Yeah.
know what I call that? A silver tsunami.
There you go. But
Yeah.
I have this intriguing part because it's not just happening in New Hampshire, it's happening in New England.
Yes.
Maine,
Yes.
you see now, New
Maine,
Hampshire.
Vermont,
And
old.
one of the challenges for us is having enough employees to work in these, not just healthcare, because that's going to be booming, but affordable housing that goes with it.
Yeah. So, when we talk about what are the biggest strains in the state of New Hampshire, but also, you look at other states like Maine and Vermont also have big rural areas. They have some metropolitan areas, but the biggest lack is transportation. So what happens is, if I live in Manchester, I probably have some access to public transportation, or if I live in Portsmouth, but I live in Epping, I got nothing, okay? And a lot of times, when people look for senior help, they'll Google, and they'll find senior helpers, and, they'll call and they'll say, well, I need a ride to the doctors, and I need this, and I say, well, we don't just do transportation, but we have this great little thing here in the state of New Hampshire that it's through the Alliance for Community Transportation, and I give people this number because it maps out all across the entire state where the transportation is. So if you no longer can drive, you don't have a family member, and guess what? Unfortunately, taxis are kind of expensive. If you're on a fixed income, this is a fantastic alternative.
So with that, those numbers are amazing, but now somebody wants to stay in their home. What's the challenge? What can you do to help them? What services are they looking for aging in place in this place?
So when you look at aging in place, there are a number of things that people need assistance with. It could be some things like, I need some light housekeeping. I need my linens changed. I need my laundry done. If you live in senior housing, many times you don't have a washer and dryer on your floor. You might live on the 6th floor and the washer and dryer's on the first floor, and you got to get down there with your walker. That's not going to happen. We can do errands. We can do grocery shopping, meal preparation. A transportation is a part of it. We take people to the doctor's appointments, hair appointments, out to lunch, for a ride to the beach. And then as your needs change, maybe you also need assistance with bathing, grooming, toileting. And those are things that will maintain that level of independence so you can remain in your home.
As we age, we recommend that most people have certain things in order. What would that be? What do you normally request or would be helpful as we age?
Yeah, that's a great idea, Al, because so many times we'll say, I'll do it tomorrow, but tomorrow comes and you never know when, the big guy upstairs is going to change. He's got a plan, and you don't know when that plan's going to start to evolve. And guess what? I could sit here, walk out tonight, and have a heart attack. And guess what? Do I have a will in place? Do I have advanced directives? Have I taken the time to deem someone my power of attorney for my financial affairs, for my health care? Do I have all of my insurance in place? I'm talking about not just health insurance. Do I have my life insurance? Do I have long-term care insurance? Living in if you have to go to a skilled nursing home in the state of New Hampshire, the average cost per year is a little over $66,000. To get those same services in your home, you're talking about $25,000. So there's a lot to be learned about the options that you have available to you, and I'm going to point this out on the National Aging in Place website, naipc.org. You can look there and you can get this helpful tool that helps you plan what we call Act 3. Okay, Act 3, or sometimes people call it the fourth quarter, whatever it happens to be, whatever you want to refer to it as. But if you want to age in place, this is a great document to help you get there.
Now, one of the things before we end is it always amazes me that somebody that does what your group does, caregivers every day, be it nurses, be it home health care, anything, they give so much of themselves. And we've had this conversation before. You give so much. When you go home, what happens? How do you restore that well in you to, what happens? I mean, I know the burnout is high.
It is, but you know, so I spent 30 years in technology selling the next best widget. I was marching to the end of a quarter for year and year after year after year. And came home and so big deal, you know, I made the numbers for the quarter and the next day I was at 0 and you started the race all over again. Now, when I leave someone and I say, you know, or today I went to see someone and said, so great to have you back home again. And she looked over at me and she goes, I love being home. That's the charge, that you know that every day you're making a difference in someone's life. And that's priceless.
We are so fortunate to have you, and really here on the Seacoast, and for starting this program. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody, to our show here from the National Aging in Place Council, based here in Stratham, New Hampshire. And along with me today is Gail Davis. She's from Senior Helpers, based in Stratham. Can you tell us a little bit about Senior Helpers?
Yes, we provide in-home non-medical care in Rockingham and Stratford County.
And I'm Al Brandino, and I'm with the Voice Library based here in Exeter, New Hampshire. We're a remarkable storytelling company that's really based in legacy and a focus also on education. And we have with us our guest, Jim Better. And Jim is with Essential Plans of Insurance. Jim, can you tell us what is Essential Plans of Insurance?
Essential Plans is really an educational forum that provides people what they need to know to prepare for what healthcare is going to become once they leave the workforce and get into the government style of healthcare.
And why would people be concerned about healthcare expense, like especially after 65? Well, that bridge, right, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as I call it, the fourth quarter of our lives is spent in the government-sponsored health insurance area, and 70% of the population is going to need care beyond what the government provides. Currently, when people are in the workforce, they have deductibles and they have unlimited maximums and unlimited annual expense covered by their group-sponsored plan or their individual plan. But once you get into the Medicare arena, there are caps on things. That you only get 10 days of acute care, and then you may get a total of 90 days covered by the government. After that, you're on your own, depending on what the situation is.
Wow.
So when you talk about what the government provides, are you really looking in at Medicare and Medicaid, or are there other options?
That's a good question. When people get into the fourth quarter, there are a number of options to take care of the diseases that eventually hit us all, whether it's heart attacks, strokes, Alzheimer's, dementia, arthritis, any kind of those critical illnesses.
Boy, a lot to look forward to, huh?
Oh, I can't wait.
70% of us at some point, once we go beyond age 65, are going to need care that goes beyond what the government covers.
What are the stages of care? I'm curious about that, the stages of care.
Stages of care are, well, generally, and Gail knows about this certainly, people generally, when they become ill, they stay at home for as long as they can. They'll have family will come and take care of them, friends will take care of them, perhaps they'll get some assisted living, physical therapy, or whatever else they may need to be able to stay at home. And the goal is, of course, is everybody wants to age in place. They want to stay at home. When that's no longer possible, then it becomes an assisted living situation. And assisted living is really, it's a cruise to nowhere. You've got a little apartment with one room, perhaps two rooms in an assisted living facility. And you go outside your door and they may be playing cards or there'll be some type of activity. You get your meals provided for you, and then you go back into your room. So it's like a cruise, but you're really not going anywhere. And then, of course, eventually it's nursing home time and all of the specialty care that comes with that. And then the last stage, of course, is hospice. Well, it's not really the last stage. There's one more beyond that, which is the end of life.
Yes.
But the cost of care in that spectrum can be quite enormous.
So Jim, tell us, how does long-term care insurance, how does that get paid for?
Well, long-term care is, there's a number of ways you can pay for long-term care. Self-pay is if you've got a lot of money, and I mean you need to have a lot of money, somewhere in excess of a couple of $1 million to be safe and be able to provide for it, because the cost of long-term care through the whole spectrum can go into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not uncommon to have Alzheimer's patients live 5, 6, 8, or 10 years in an assisted living or a nursing home situation, and then you're talking a lot of money. You're talking $600,000-$700,000, or even more, perhaps. So that it takes a lot of money in the bank to be able to pay for that. The side note of that is, if you have that kind of money, why would you want to pay for it if you have another option? And I'll come back to that. Another way to pay for care is through what they call CCRC. We have one in town. Riverwoods is a CCRC, and that's a situation where you give them a chunk of money, $300,000-$400,000. They'll give most of that back to the family once you've expired, but then you'll also pay them $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000 a month for care while you're in their facility. The other way, of course, is to rely on the Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare and Medicaid are quite different. Medicare is a system, that a government-sponsored system that pays for acute situations. They'll pay for a short period of time, 90 days, once you've met the qualifiers. And one of the qualifiers, and everybody who's listening should be aware that once you go into a hospital and you get released, Medicare will not pick up expenses unless you've had 3 full days of admitting. And what hospitals have done, in my own experience with my wife's situation, was that she was in there 3 days, but the first day was in there for observation. So she really was only in for 2 days as far as Medicare was concerned. And when she had to go into rehab for 10 days, and that was all out of pocket because of the way the hospital coded the first day that she was in the facility.
What I'd like to do for the watchers and the listeners is to really kind of get a sense about, our council, the people that are there, the people who are reaching out to help people in the community, like yourself. Can you give me something outside of what you normally do that you can be really proud of? Something outside of your business that you've done, that in the community that you're really proud of?
Well, there's two things that come to mind, Al. One is years ago I had the privilege of being on the board of directors for the Healthy Kids Corporation. And that corporation was in place to help children who didn't have health insurance because their parents couldn't afford it, or for whatever the reason was. And then Healthy Kids Corporation provided health insurance for the children so they could get the pediatric care, they could get the routine exams that children need to have as they grow. The other part that was more on a fun basis was being on the board at the Seacoast Repertory Theater. And that was a lot of fun from a lot of standpoints, and very rewarding too. We established a program where seniors could come in on Thursday nights or Saturday matinees, where typically there weren't a lot of people who came to the shows. And we brought people in from Edgewood and other facilities at a discounted basis, on a $10 basis. And they were able to get the benefits of being able to see live theater.
Wow.
In a great
That's
environment.
Right.
It was very rewarding.
And I think that's one of the more interesting things. We have, as we were talking about the graying, or our silver
tsunami?
we talked about last segment, so many have so much wealth of information. So many seniors could really get involved in something, be part of something. I mean, it's one thing to be lonely, that's another thing. You know, and isolation is another more horrible part of that. But it's up to you too. You got to get involved. There's so many things you can do, and here's a perfect example from Jim on just two aspects of what you can do. So before we leave you today, we want to say thank you to Jim, and we'd like for you to reach out to us at the naipc.org if you'd like to find out more about us. And we hope you'll join us. Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third edition of our National Aging in Place Council here in New Hampshire, based on the Seacoast. I'm Al Brandino. I'm with the Voice Library. We're a remarkable storytelling company that's really focused on education and legacy. And this is Gail Davis from Senior Helpers. Gail, tell us a little bit about you.
We provide in-home non-medical care. We're based in Stratham, and we service the Rockingham and Stratford County area.
And our guest today, Mark Sullivan from Atlantic Financial Consulting Group. Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
Really
Glad
excited
to be here.
have you. You're also a member of the Our Council here of Aging in Place in New Hampshire.
Great, yes.
Before we get started on what you do, and tell us why you chose to be part of this group. What did you like about it when you first came?
Well, I noticed the demographics were saying that helping seniors was going to be very important. The demographics are turning that way. I think I've heard the phrase silver tsunami. And so this baby boomer generation in particular has dictated a lot of what America has responded to. And I think that I'd like to help them age in place. And it's not an inexpensive proposition, but with the proper planning and use of experts, I think it's a very doable thing.
And you're kind of a very interesting character because you've done so many things, not just in your field and helping so many people, but some other things I'd like to get to in a little bit. But first, tell me, what is a financial advisor and what do you do?
Well, a financial advisor is someone who meets with folks, finds out what their goals and objectives are. I think more importantly, they try to find out what keeps them up at night, and then they try to recommend solutions. Oftentimes people will already have some existing accounts. They may or may not be the best ones for them. And so a good financial advisor would hopefully upgrade what they may have. And if they're independent, they usually don't have any blind spots, so that's really a nice plus too.
I just want to clarify something because you said something really interesting. Independent versus something, what's the difference between that, please?
Well, years ago, I ran the brokerage office, and we weren't independent. So when my advisors, and I use the term loosely, recommended products, they were products made by our employer. And so it's not like my brokers were surveying the landscape and finding the best thing for the clients, but they were appropriate nonetheless, just not necessarily the best. So I think if you have your choice, you'd rather use an independent who isn't locked into a limited menu.
So when you say a broker, are we talking about, like, I don't know, Ameriprise or Merrill Lynch, or are those the type of companies? Are those brokers?
Well, they like to use the term financial advisor.
Okay.
I don't think you'll ever see broker on anyone's business card. Interestingly, financial advisor is actually a marketing title. There's no exam to become a financial advisor. It actually boils down to two titles. One is registered representative, and one is registered investment advisor. Registered representative is a person that works for a company typically and has certain marching orders, and they try to do the best with what they have available to them. A registered investment advisor is a quite different species. It's someone who's required to act in a fiduciary capacity, which really requires them to put the client's interests first before their employers. In the registered representative category, the employer comes first, as with most sales positions.
Okay.
But the registered investment advisor, especially for seniors, where at some point diminished capacity might come into play, I think it's already happening for me. So I think that it's really important to have the law on your side rather than having a caveat emptor model whereby it's up to you to find out the value of the advice that you're getting.
So how do you pick a good one? How do you pick a good advisor or financial planner?
Well, you want to ask friends, especially people that were whose opinions you respect. But there's also a national resource called FINRA.org, FINRA.org, and everyone who's got securities licenses is in that database. So you can look up what licenses they have, what their track records are, the history of any complaints, if there are any. Many don't, but some do, and all the places they've worked. So it's really very helpful. And I think if you're really focused on the right area, you want to look for the title Registered Investment Advisor, not Registered Representative. And those are the only two titles you'll see in there.
So that's pretty interesting. I always pride myself on, you know, being a good research person and maybe a little bit smart. Why wouldn't I just want to do it myself?
Well, you can. That's definitely an option. It'll save you a few bucks. I've been asked that question many times, as you might imagine, and I've always said, well, like dentistry or medicine, maybe not the cheapest is the best. Or as they say, you know, you could defend yourself in a court of law, but you know what they say, that lawyer has a fool for his client. I would recommend using a professional, because it's not just about selecting the right products. It has someone that's aware of your game plan, your goals and objectives, to remind you when it's literally hitting the fan that, you know, sometimes to do nothing is the exact thing you need to do, but it's very hard to do. But the average American earns, well, the stock market has historically averaged, and this is just a wide paintbrush here, but almost double digits. Let's say 10%. That's a big number, by the way. I'm not being cavalier. The average American investor, when you look at all of them, averages 3%. And the reason is because typically they buy high. They don't realize that at the moment they're purchasing something, and then they sell when it drops, and so they sell when it's low. So it's the opposite of what you want to be doing, but again, they're trying to react. They don't want to lose any more money than they've already lost, but it takes a great deal of self-discipline to do that. I think it might almost be asking too much, really. So I think having an experienced advisor is a good couple of small costs to add to the equation. And it's awfully hard to measure the opportunity loss of what you did on your own versus what you might have done with a professional.
If you don't mind, Mark, I like to let the audience really kind of get to know a little bit more about you, not just on the business end. And I know I'm really proud of you in many ways, but the one that makes me most proud is what you have done for the military. I know there's two specific organizations. You're really a founder, or helped found one, and a supporter of one right here in Exeter that everyone's very proud of. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. My father passed last August, and a World War II veteran. I was always very proud, as was he, of his generation, the greatest generation, clearly. And so I was at an event, an informational event at the Sheraton in Portsmouth, and it was put on by Veterans Count, which at that point was only in Manchester. And it was a group that was put together to try to help New Hampshire-based veterans and their families, a very important component, families too, when no other resources were available. And when I heard their story about all the things that Washington didn't cover, I was compelled to act. So they got the table captains together afterwards. I was one of them, and they asked for someone to spearhead this. And I guess I didn't step back fast enough, so I was the first president.
You were drafted.
I was proud, very proud, because I never served, and I thought, you know, this is going to be my way to try to give back. And it turned out to be remarkable. I mean, more successful than I ever imagined. So, the key was picking really selfless, dedicated people to lead the charge, and I had really a lot of luck, because I guess it's one of those causes that people say yes to, and they should. So we exceeded our dreams, and we're really happy about, and there's now other chapters as well, so it's really going great guns.
And tell me, the one that's real close to us is the Healy Foundation.
Well, yeah, I got to know Natalie Healy, Dan Healy's Gold Star mother, through the Veterans Count operation. In fact, I invited her to one of the gala events. And she's just, if you know her, you just, you know what I mean, you just love her right away. And she's just so dedicated to her son's memory. Her son, Dan Healy, was killed in action in Afghanistan in a rescue mission to help try to rescue the four soldiers, Navy SEALs, in fact, on the ground in Afghanistan, the group that was featured in the movie Lone Survivor, of which there was only one survivor, Marcus Luttrell, unfortunately. But He was there on a helicopter to rescue them, 16 soldiers, the cream of the crop, and they got blown out of the sky, and it was tragic. And so she's dedicated a lot of time and effort into the Dan Healy Foundation, which provides scholarships to parents like Natalie who are single and trying to raise a family on a very limited budget. And so it's a great cause. I'm really delighted to be involved. And please, out there, keep that in mind. We're really happy to provide any information you'd like. Both groups are fantastic.
Well, Mark and Gail,
Yeah.
this is our...
That's it. It's another segment down. History.
And a beautiful, beautiful one at that. So thank you so much,
Well,
Mark.
my pleasure.
And thank you, everybody out there, for joining us tonight. And we look forward to you at the next segment. Thank you.
See you next time.
Welcome to the fourth segment of the National Aging in Place Council, based here in Exeter, New Hampshire. I'm Al Brandano, and I'd like to welcome you. I'm with the Voice Library. We're based here in Exeter, and our company is really a remarkable storytelling company that's focused on legacy and education. And this is Gail Davis, and Gail's with Senior Helpers. Can you tell us a little bit about Senior
I sure
Helpers?
can, Al. Thanks. Hey, so we are Senior Helpers, and we provide in-home non-medical care in Stratford and Rockingham County, and we're based right on Route 33 in Stratham.
And with us is Device Bright, Mr. Grant Sanborn. Grant,
Hello.
welcome.
Hi, Al. Hi, Gail.
And-
How you guys doing?
We have a geek among us.
Well, there's a
Al,
geek. Can you
uh-oh.
tell? Could you tell
I
his
can.
glasses?
Do I look
can.
like a geek?
His
Geek
glasses
yeah.
make him look really
But
smart.
he has no pocket protector. You
Eh.
gotta get him one of those.
It matches my shirt. You can't see it.
Device Bright. What is Device Bright?
So, yeah, absolutely, Al. I run a company called Device Bright, and what the goal of my company is really to help older adults get more comfortable and confident with technology. So I do group presentations. I love doing group presentations. I'm a former teacher. I do one-on-ones. I also came from a technology internet background, so I do some online. I have a newsletter, all kinds of stuff with tips and things like that. But what I really saw was there was a gap. There's a certain generation, probably my generation included, that we weren't raised on technology. We didn't have a phone in our hand, from the time we woke up to the time we went to bed, and maybe after we went to bed. And so there's a real lack of intuition. So people aren't really intuitive with these devices. They don't come with, owner's manuals anymore. You're just giving, probably your kids are buying them for you. They hand them to you and say, here's your iPad.
Figure it out.
There you go. Figure it out. And, there's some fear there. There's some, people just feel intimidated by something they don't understand, and they're not really being taught how to use it. So I saw that gap, and I saw an opportunity, and it makes me feel good to teach people about this stuff and make them more empowered. And I mean, my goal is to, I have this tagline about, stop calling your kids for help. And what I really like, and I've had this happen a few times, is when somebody learns how to do something they haven't done before, and they call their kids and say, guess what? I'm not asking you a question. I learned how to do something, I can do it. So that's really what my focus is on with Device
And I
Bright.
have to tell you, that's probably the most frustrating part for my kids when I would ask them something. I would never see them get so angry, and I would get angry back at them. So it was like this back and forth
No,
thing all the time.
I mean, I have older parents, and I was always that guy that, set up the VCR when I went to college. I would write my mom out the list of things, how to tape, St. Elsewhere or whatever. And it was still, when I get the call now, like my mom's like, I can't get Netflix to work. Yeah, I still feel that tension, and I'm like, wow, can't she call someone like me? But that's not me. So I totally get it. And that, and they're talking it's the grandkids too that are doing a lot, which is neat actually, because the
They're pushing
grandkids
them.
can do,
Yeah.
the back and forth with them. So
That's
it's
great.
pretty cool.
So what do you find to be like, the most challenging thing for seniors? And believe me, I know I've called upon your services too.
Yes.
After
You
30
were
years
there.
in technology,
You
I'm like,
learned a lot,
help,
Gail."
Grant, help.
No, I mean, the most challenging thing, it really is, it's interesting, is because like a lot of our local libraries do a great job with the classes and the kind of one-on-ones about learning how to text and learning, maybe how to do word processing and things like that. The biggest challenge I see is just a lack of trying to reach out and learn more and be a little more adventurous. So there's a real fear that someone's going to they're going to press a button, and guess what? The world is going to blow up. Or they're going to erase every single thing. They're going to erase their kids' pictures. They're going to erase all the grandkids' stuff. And so there's that fear. And so it's really about introducing. I love to introduce things to people so they can find out this device that they're holding, it can be a lot more than just taking pictures and texting and making phone calls.
One of the things for me is I know, and working with some blind people in National Federation of the Blind, is that isolation becomes a problem for people, right? And so having like social media like Facebook, Instagram, all these things has kind of created for people their own community. So what do you see for people, older people, or people, I hate to say older people because that's not necessarily the case.
Us.
I know, it is us. But
I'd never
not
say
necessarily
that.
older people, but people who are maybe not as experienced in technology. I think we make this jump that because you're older, that you don't know what's going on. And of course, that's not true. But really, what do you find, like, say Facebook? What do they need?
Well,
usually
it's
help
really
with?
interesting because the groups and people I've worked with, it's, with social media in particular, because there's a real, I feel like there's a real opportunity to connect. But it certainly runs the gamut. Some people want nothing to do with it, and that's okay. And that's another thing I talk to people about is you don't have to do everything. Just because you hear about Twitter or Instagram, you don't have to feel like you have to do it all. But there are little things you can do, like social media, that are going to help connect you. But what I talk about is also do it on your terms. So you need to learn a little bit about what you're doing so you can learn to control it. So, there's a lot of security and privacy fears because, once again, this is a generational change where transparency is becoming the norm, but for certain ages on up, that's a real foreign feeling, is like, hey, everything's out there for everybody to see. So if you can educate yourself a little bit about your privacy settings on your Facebook, so you make sure that the people that you want to see what you're saying or taking pictures of see it, and not maybe the whole world. And these things change on such a daily basis. You have to be aware enough to know where to go and look to turn things off and on. And it also is asking for help. A lot of people just suffer in silence, and that's the reason they're maybe isolated, because they're scared to ask, or they're embarrassed. They feel like they feel like they're smart people, but they don't know anything about this, and that's disempowering.
And to your point, one of the things that I find troubling is that we don't realize, a lot of people don't realize, and you mentioned it, giving away your intellectual property, everything that you put on there does not belong to you. If you read the disclosure statements, even Google's email, not just Google, but the email is not yours. The pictures are not yours. The likeness is not yours. So you can understand the fear of somebody not participating in a community because they're just basically afraid.
And I've had, and it's been interesting because I've had a number of clients and people we talk to about this, where they're like, how can I protect my personal privacy completely when I do this? And frankly, you can't. I mean, to be involved in this, what's going on with social media, with email, you're going to have to give up, be willing to give something up to get something. And some people aren't willing to do that, and that's fine. But you have to recognize that you probably are going to have to give something up when it comes to that, just because that's the way we're progressing. And maybe it's not the best thing, but I had to come to terms with it. I would love to have everything private. I mean, I want to make sure that bully in high school can't find me on Facebook. But then again, I want to be able to connect with people. So it's just a little give and take.
Give and take, yeah,
it
absolutely.
is. It's give and take.
Absolutely.
And in a way that makes you feel comfortable as a person. So you need to feel comfortable about that. Yeah.
So, is there anything from a technology related that older adults could benefit from if they really knew about it? Aside from the scary stuff, but if they really knew about maybe how cool Facebook was, or what about Skype? And
there's a couple things I really call attention to, and the number one thing I love, well, there's probably three, but I'll just touch quickly on the number one. I love introducing people to podcasts. So if you're not familiar with a podcast, it's actually like on-demand audio that you can get typically through your phone or on your desktop, but it's typically free. And it's basically like the Library of Congress of audio programs. So, It's American Life is on there, NPR programs, but you've got sports programs, you've got financial, anything you can imagine. You can get probably for free through and you subscribe to it and it downloads it.
Great
and you
learning
can listen.
tool.
It's an amazing learning tool, and it's, like I said, it's free. And whatever your interests are, you'll find some programs that you really enjoy listening to. And so that's the kind of thing I love to introduce. Even online shopping is kind of a great gateway opportunity to make yourself feel comfortable if you don't. Go, try out Amazon, get something sent to you. And then there's brain enrichment apps. There's all kinds of different things out there than really, just some of the basics like texting and emailing.
Okay, I have to ask this question.
What?
Because I have to do
I'm
it.
dying to know if this is going
There's
to be.
got to be at some point, even as technically as proficient as you are, when was the last time you laughed at yourself doing technology?
Well, I won't tell you the last time because that was probably about a half an hour ago, and it's probably too embarrassing to talk about. But I do have, and my son is going to love this. So I have a younger son, amazingly technology proficient, and I like obviously to consider myself. I accidentally in the past 9 months or so erased a ton of his stuff off of his Kindle Fire, and he was understandably horrified. It was a complete accident, but he's like, "Dad, you're the Mr. Device Sprite guy. You are not supposed to do this." And I'm like, it wasn't funny at the time, but I can certainly laugh about it now. So it happens to everybody. The nice thing is it all disappears, but it all can come. It just is an opportunity.
Can you
for
restore
learning.
it?
Oh, I couldn't restore what I got rid of. So
Okay.
it can happen to anybody.
All right, Dad.
Yeah.
Well, that's
This is great, huh, Al?
not only is it
Yeah.
great, but what's
Yeah.
intriguing is for me is that there was a lot of information that you just told us about security and safety and the ability to have to give up something.
Yeah.
And as long as people are aware of that, I think that's the problem that we're not aware of. We think when we
Right.
go there that no one's going to know or no one's going to care, and all the advertisers that advertise to us every time you went on Amazon
Yeah.
and you search for something.
Absolutely.
Before I do go, maybe you can just show or tell us about, you searched for shoes last night.
Yeah.
How do they know? Can you share that with us?
Sure.
before we go?
So I also have a marketing background, and so I have a little of the back insight into that. But basically, the way technology is working now is, it literally knows what you're doing almost all the time. So searching for something is a great example where an advertiser or a search engine will pay, I don't want to get too technical, but they know what you search for. And they can put some tracking, for lack of a better term, software onto your, how you're searching and doing that. And that advertiser might follow you around. So I show this example. Facebook's a great one. If you're on Google and you're looking for a toy for your grandson or granddaughter, you find that toy, you're reading about it, guess what? You'll go onto Facebook and you'll notice on the right-hand side of your thing,
Absolutely.
there is that exact product that you were looking for.
And you're like,
and
how
it blows
did
your
they
mind
know?
the first time you see it because you're like, how do they do that? But this is once again becoming the norms, and things like, your demographics and your in Facebook's another great example. They're collecting info about you all the time, what you like, what you're paying attention to, and they'll put in your feed, sponsored ads. What sponsored meaning someone paid for it that relates to something that you probably looked up or you're interested in, but you might not know it. So they do a really nice job of making it kind of transparent. But things are they're very technical, very good at what they do. So once again, as long as you're aware of it, it can be a little unsettling at first, but maybe you can throw it off by doing some weird searches that, to see exactly how it's working to make yourself feel a little better. But it's, once again, it's that give or take, and you kind of have to decide, like, okay, maybe this is the new world we're living in.
Once again, a great guest.
I know.
And-
I know.
and great
And I
hosts.
learned something. I'm going to go check those podcasts out.
And one of the other things for us is not only did we learn something, but we're passing it on to a whole bunch of other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you'll join us for our next segment. Grant, Gail, thank you.
It's
Thank
a
you,
wrap.
Al. Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
See ya.